All right. Good evening, everyone. This will be our April 21st special meeting. If I could have a roll call, please.
Shannon.
Here.
Leek.
Here.
Leek.
Here.
Day. Mr. Day.
Okay.
Mr. Morris.
Here.
Ms. Edwards. Mr. Panther.
Here.
Okay, and just for the record, it looks like Mrs. Edwards might or might not be joining us. We'll keep an eye on for her and see if she joins us via Zoom, but we have made contact with her this evening. Just for our notice, to make sure that our clerk, when we did this, we put our notice for this public special meeting at all the required places, as well as putting it on the website, I believe, immediately. And as we did get our agenda packet, that came in a little bit after the actual first posting of the notice as we put together this information that's before us here. Our first item is our Pledge of Allegiance. If we could all stand for our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Super. Okay. For Zoom, you, I think, had the invitation out there on the website and actually had some residents actually ask about it. Has anybody joined via Zoom?
Right now, I don't have any additional members, and no one can.
All right. If that changes before I close citizen time, just let me know. Okay. This will be the time for the public. If they'd like to come up to address the council, you just state your name and address for the record. All right. Seeing none, whoops, apologies. And make sure her mic is on, I think. Oh, great.
Dottie Leonard, 14801 Washington Street in Haymarket. The only thing I wanted to respond to about the tax issue, I was extremely impressed with your communication, and I was saying to myself when I was watching that whole video, gee, I wish I could see them work like that on every subject. It was just amazing getting to see you work, and that's how I remembered us doing it. Was everything happened right in front of the people, and it was good. I wanted to say, as far as the taxes go, that I know you're working to make it equitable as can be, but it's important too that the businesses survive. But the only thing that I didn't agree with, and I think I've mentioned it to you before, Mr. Mayor, is that I don't think we should long-term plan to drop all the taxes, because I think it's important for us, and I just wanted to say that in front of the whole group. I think it's important for us as to defend our town charter, to always show that we're charging some taxes, and that has a purpose, because what matters more than anything is that our town is protected, the charter is protected, and my goal for what I would like to see all of you do, and I hope all of you get right back in. I'm doing my job. I gave you my front yard. My goal is to see us get to a point where we can bring inspections back to Haymarket and other things, and the taxes are going to be important in that, because we're going to have to pay consultants for the ARB, consultants for maybe streetscape, landscape design, or something of that nature. So I want you to take care of everybody you can. Just don't give away the farm. All right, thank you. And I appreciated your prayer, Chris. I appreciated your prayer at the first of the month. It was amazing, and I believe, like you do, like the mayor does, like most of you do, Our country's coming back, and we're going to be fine. We're going to make it. There is a God. Thank you for what you do.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your comment.
Bob Weir, 6853 St. Paul. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy to see that you're discussing a real estate refund. I mean, in this particular environment, I actually welcome it. However, been there, done that. And I'm a little concerned about how you're going to carry it off. Statutorily, I believe the only section that deals with that is 15.22511.1, and that requires a surplus in order to enable the refund. I've said it before and I'll say it again tonight. I don't see that you're going to have a surplus this year. So the question is, how are you going to fund the refund? If it's not from a surplus and you intend to, say for lack of a better term, you're going to draw it from reserves, you don't have the statutory authority to do that, and that's my concern. What is the impact of issuing that refund? As welcome as it might be to some of the residents, what is the scope of the refund, and where are you going to draw it from? And I hope to hear more from you this evening about that. With respect to the letter to Delegate Room and Senator Bell, again, I applaud your effort to do that. However, quite frankly, it's a little late. They're going into session tomorrow. There is some question as to what they're going to do with the date, whether it's going to remain at May 5, whether it's going to move to June 16th, or whether it's going to move to November, depending upon which viewpoint reigns supreme in the General Assembly. I would suspect that given what I've heard in conversations with various delegates and various senators, that you're probably looking at a scenario where Senator Peterson's position or his option is probably the most likely, in which you're looking at June 16th or somewhere around that date. So I would hope that you're very well aware of that. I don't know that the governor's plan will survive the Senate. So I would prepare, if I were the town, for either the date in May or the date in June that is prescribed. We'll know more tomorrow. Just something to be aware of. Thank you.
And thank you for your comment, sir. Anybody else would like to speak? Anyone else that had joined or that you're aware of?
We have nobody joining, but it looks like Vice Mayor should be signing it shortly.
Okay, all right, great. All right, with that, I'll go ahead and close our citizens' time. Our first item is the approval of the 2021 tax rate. We are on page 3 through 8 of our packet with a draft motion on page 3. I guess we can bring up this for discussion and see if there's been any changes since we last met and decided to go this route.
Mayor, may I ask that we put this to the bottom of the agenda, give Vice Mayor the opportunity to come in and speak if we want to maybe run to the update with Roberto,
Yep.
just to give her a couple minutes. I don't know if it'll make a difference if she can get in by then, but I'll
Sure.
just give her
No,
the
that
opportunity.
seems like a very reasonable request. All right. I guess going down the line here, we can now discuss about the letter. First of all, do we have this available for the audience?
I can make copies.
Yeah, if you can, and give it to at least one of the two of the citizens that had brought this up. And for the listening audience, we do have an article that references Senator Peterson as well as Senator Locke, Delegate Hampton, and others that described that they were looking for maybe some kind of alternative than a November election as we closely follow this. Not sure if everybody's had a chance to read this at the dais. If not, we'll go ahead and give it a minute or two.
And just real quick, Susan has joined us. She's here at the bottom of the screen.
Okay, let's just make sure also. Susan, are you able to hear us okay? Susan, are you able to hear us okay?
She's connecting her audio now.
Oh, okay. Just want to make sure she can hear and be heard.
Close your blinds so we can see.
Yeah.
Susan, can you hear us okay?
Just checking, Vice Mayor, are you able to hear us okay? We can, well, we'll see if we can get her to join us here. Meanwhile, if everybody did have a chance, just let me know when you're, oh, there we go. Yes. Maybe also if you, I don't know if you have the ability to shut your blinds in the background. All we see is just a silhouette of you. Vice Mayor, I don't know if you're able to hear us, but if it's possible that you can maybe turn down your blinds in the back, because for some reason a reflection is making it to where we can't see you at all. You're just like a oh, there we go. Yeah, I hear you then. Yeah, that didn't help at all, did it? Yeah, apologies for making you do that, but it didn't help at all. It's just we're going to try to cut. We're going to try to put our lights down. Maybe if you angle the camera a little bit, maybe towards the wall versus the light in the background.
Get a flashlight and shine it.
Yeah.
It's just where I am.
Okay. All right. Well, we know that you're there, so I think there's no question of you haven't joined us, and the fact that you can hear us and be heard, I think will make for the record to show that she joined us at the time. So with that, I guess we could, if we'd like to just discuss about the elections, if whether or not we want to take a position on this. There is also a handout there that I had Chris Kuhn write up, just an example of whether or not we intend to support or not support the governor's suggestion, and with maybe also with this newest information that came out today, whether or not this alternative one where it's maybe just delaying for a couple weeks. So maybe if anybody would like to start with that, I do have some comments I'd like to make, but I'll reserve until after we hear from some of the other council.
Mr. Mayor, one of the issues I have, I mean, I'm okay either way at all, but the problem I have with moving it to November is, we were kind of discussing this earlier, where are the town folks going to vote? Will it be down at Tyler, or will they vote here? Do they go to two different places, or do they go to one? And so I don't know what the answer to that is.
Yeah, I think Chris Kuhn might have that answer, but go ahead. You probably have more comments or
because
thoughts.
I know the governor's, you reading his letter, his intent is to get more people out to vote and everything, and I think that's a good thing. I really do, whether it's national elections, town elections, or whatever. But I'm just not sure. Personally, I would probably be more in favor of either staying with May 5th, doing the social distancing here, or June 16th, because hopefully everything will be opened up for the most part in
Right.
phase one by then. So
Okay.
I'm good either way.
Chris, I'm not sure if you wanted to respond. I think there was an email from Michelle that the way that she framed the email gave me the impression that it would be all at one time and all at one location.
Correct. That's exactly how I see it as well. It said if the May town's election are postponed to the presidential ballot, the cost of the town will be somewhat less than a standalone election in May. And what I indicate from that is that they would do a joint election. So I don't know if that means two separate ballots at the same location, just depending on your address, or if all of it would be on one ballot. That I don't know, but it seems that They would just have it at the one location. at
Okay.
Elections.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other council would like to weigh in or speak regarding this?
I'm good either way, sir.
Mayor, I would.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say that I really have no preference. I think there are benefits and negatives to either one. Obviously, the biggest benefit to November is that you get more people, voting, and that's, to me, that to me kind of outweighs the May elections. But to be honest with you, I don't really see any. I have no real, like Steve, I have no real huge preference.
Okay.
Ms. Edwards?
Ms. Edwards?
Yeah, I will just say that the people that I have had a chance to talk to have already sent in their ballots and everything. I mean, everybody's just assuming that, the Board of Elections sent out for the absentee ballots, people returned them, they turned around and sent their ballots in, so I don't know. We just don't have that many people here in town. It's not like it's 100,000 people. That's just my opinion.
And Mayor, to piggyback on that, I did want to let everyone know that I did reach out to Miss White, who is the registrar for Prince William County, and there have been 162 absentee ballots sent to residents of town, and at least 28 of them have been received in the mail, and that was as of yesterday. So there still could be some in transit. So the ballots not yet received is 134, but that does mean almost 30 people have already sent their absentee ballots.
Right.
So
Right.
I wanted to let you all know that because the November election, they're anticipating they would discard the absentee ballots and then push that to the November.
Right.
So.
And that's something
Right.
that we would have to communicate to, in some way, to those who have already cast their ballots through the absentee route, that their ballot would not be counted if we go with the November date.
Well, yeah, that would obviously be the election board's duties and responsibilities.
theirs?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's their responsibility to notify if this House bill does go through for a November, then there's a lot of, as it's defined, I think, in there of how he's kind of decided what was going to happen, that the ballots wouldn't be counted. And also even the term, not term date, but the start date for the new is kind of decided. But my purpose of this was just to get some dialogue to see, as a town, did we have, at least on the dais here and through the public, through hearing from citizens, did we have any type of position that we'd want to relay that? Obviously, let's see, for everybody, Councilman Leake, did you have anything to say? I was going to say, before I talk about it and give my opinion, I thought I'd listen to everyone else's first.
Of course, outside of the mere fact that we already have absentee ballots being ordered as well as ballots being turned in, I think it's only the fairest to everybody. There are some folks on this dais that are rerunning, and there are some folks that are running who have either served before or have never served at any point. And I think the fairest way is to go ahead and hold the election in May. I think all it does is tips the scales in one favor if we were to push it to November. And I think that the fairest way is to make sure that we're holding this in May or there shortly after, but before our term ends, in regards with our charter as well, which states that we're supposed to give up office on June 30th.
Right, new would start July 1. I think there obviously was a health and safety concern of reason why this was looked at. As we've seen on the national news as well, that there's concerns about an all ballot or mail-in type of voting, that in person, a lot of people, and speaking to at least 2 residents that I know, favor being able to come in and physically do this. And I think that's maybe where his concern was, to put this delay, since he has a stay-at-home order, even though that this obviously could possibly be done safely with an in-outdoor and with the right precautions and the right set up inside here that the people could still participate, that in my opinion, probably the slight delay of putting it into a June timeframe, that gives us another X amount of days of staying at home, keeping this thing from being transmitted, especially as has been pointed out that some of the poll workers that in different localities are of senior age that go out and work the polls. That was one concern. So looking at the bigger picture, he has to not. It's almost sort of like the snow day. Well, wait a minute. Why did we cancel school? Well, there has to be all these other factors that are being considered, and I kind of think this might be one of those things where he has to consider all the areas and all the localities that by moving this or bringing it out, stretching it out a little bit further, that it allows maybe a few more days for this virus not to be transmitted from person to person. Martin, I think I did have a question for you earlier, just the fact that I think by his swipe of a signature, he's able to do, I think, a 14-day extension, if my memory serves me correct.
That is correct.
The governor, I'm sorry, I'm speaking of the governor.
By current law, the governor can postpone the election by up to 14 days from the original date of the election.
Right. And was there something also that allowed him another additional 30 days if needed?
It's not the governor, it's a three-judge panel of the Virginia Supreme Court can extend it if the local government requests that they do so. Then the Chief Justice chooses two other justices by lot, and then they can postpone to a date they deem appropriate, not to exceed 30 days from the original date of the election. So that would put us in early June, so it would not take us past the June 10th date in the governor's executive orders regarding limitations on gatherings. But that's what's currently provided by law. That's why the General Assembly is being asked to take a look at additional action to postpone the May elections.
Okay. Any other concerns or thoughts that, as far as from a council's advice or that as we're looking and considering this?
We don't know what we don't know. What's going to be coming in, in the 1st of June. Will the governor make other decisions? We know right now it's June 9th, I guess, or June 10th. That I'll just, for the sake of trying to make a decision, I have no problems with June 16th.
Okay.
Personally, that'll be after we're hopefully after we're in phase 1 or whatever that phase may be at that time for the state. So I'm in support of 16 June.
Okay. Councilman Leake? Councilman Morris?
I can go either way.
Councilman Morris?
Concerning the absentee ballots, would they be still legitimate for June?
I'll let Martin speak, but I believe so. But
Well, I read this article in the Mercury very quickly. I think the implication was that the absentee ballots that have already been voted would still count. And that makes sense because you think about it, the reason why they would want to have new absentee ballots sent out for November election is that you have one ballot per voter, and that all the races that you're eligible to vote in, you vote on a single ballot. That's probably the reasoning, but I don't know that. Nobody's told me that. I'm just supposing that. But if the May election is just continued for 6 weeks or so, and it's on a date in June, and then that date in June is considered just to be a delayed May election, then the absentee ballots that have already been voted should count for that. There's no reason not to.
But the proposal for the June date has not been proposed as yet.
No, this looks like this is a compromise that they're looking to try to get the governor to.
Probably later this week.
Yeah. Yep.
But as far as we are concerned, is it your hope, Mr. Mayor, to join the other localities in sending something to the General Assembly?
Not my concern, no. It was just an option. I wanted to see if there was a consensus from the council to see if if we supported or didn't support either one of these actions by the governor, that our voice be heard. As I mentioned at the last council meeting, that it appeared that the governor was going to make a decision without actually even hearing any of the localities that he might affect. And so that's the reason why the town, as well as 3 other ones, joined in with that letter we wrote to him to say, hey, as you're considering this, can you please consider hearing from the towns first, whatever the decision is, because it sounds like even some of the localities, whether that be the town of Vienna or Middleburg, might have a difference of an opinion of when that they would or would not want that to happen. So my thought was, in having it on tonight's agenda, was just to see if I could get a consensus that we could send to Richmond to let them know that we are either in favor or not in favor of one of these decisions. And with this latest thing happening today, it looks like there might be a compromise of a November to maybe something where it is only delayed for a few weeks. So with that, I'm just trying to see if I can get a pulse here of if we all agree that maybe a June would be something that we would support, whether or not to actually send a letter or draft letter to them.
I know personally I'm not in favor of the November date. I am not very keen on the June date, and my voice is to keep it the May date.
Okay.
I think there's 12 candidates. I think the momentum is growing with probably every candidate, and I think pushing it off would not take away. I mean, people are going to come out and vote either way. I just feel like it's set. We have taken all the necessary precautions to go to Wegmans and Walmart, and I'm sure the electoral office will take the necessary precautions to spread the booths out and to make sure that the area is safe for those who would walk in.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest concern is the people actually coming out, whether or not the people coming out that might be exposed to other people that maybe not knowing that they actually are carrying this is probably, because as we know, the governor's has a medical background, and I think that was my understanding of his intent of this was just to, if we delayed it.
Yeah, they're far more qualified medical doctors who have made worse decisions. So let's not get on the topic with our Democratic governor.
Yeah.
But when you think about our numbers and how many people have turned out already for the election through their absentee, we're at what, 20%, 15, 20%? That's a good showing.
That's more than we had last year. I think the most votes came in last year was $1.25. So if we have 129, wonder who knew that.
I just would hate for us to lose the momentum for it. And again, this is a decision that is fair in the eyes of all 12 people running. You know, it's not you giving anyone more time or anything. Decision that we're making that look favorable for those on the dais that's going to run again. It's the date that is in everyone's mind. So anyway,
we'll hear from some of the other ones.
One question.
Sure.
If we went with June 16th, and I'm not opposed to staying with May 5th. If that's what the majority council, that's how I will go. But if we did go to June, when would the swearing be? When, July?
July 1st.
Yeah, I think the election would just be, it keeps the same, keeps the same schedule as far as I know, not unless they write something different.
It says it here on July 1st would be on the paper that they submitted. July 1st would be when you take office.
So that assumes, Mayor, if I might,
Yes.
that assumes that the writ of election will be done, that the registrar can provide the people elected with the writ of election and swear them in before July 1st. Hopefully that won't be a problem, but it is a shorter time frame than they normally deal with. So the question comes up, what happens if they don't qualify the winners before July 1st? Then the people who are still in office, who were in office on June 30th, stay in office until their successors are qualified.
Okay, and a good point to note, we did have a election that we had almost 800 write-ins. It took almost 2 weeks, I think, to certify for one election. which I remember. Mr.
I
Madhu?
think
Yes.
even everybody has consensus doing May 5th, it will, let's say we are saying we want to stay on May 5th, they will able to do the election on that day.
I think our letter would just be one of many other letters that they look at, and will it make a difference? I mean, it would be a prediction, but my gut feeling would say probably not, that the town of Haymarket would like to continue the May 5th versus a June or a November. I think we're just one voice, but maybe if all of them had said the same thing, then maybe we would be part of many that would like to either continue or not continue it forward. So trying to
That
get,
means we have no power to say do this time or this time.
it's not up to us, that's correct. This would only be just a letter to our delegates and to our senators to say, hey, we've discussed this, for whatever, if we're for it or against it or don't mind the delay, this is what we would like to see happen. So, yeah, it's just a recommendation with that. Councilman Day, I think we're kind of circling back around, even though I let you have a chance, and also Vice Mayor, too.
Sure. I really, I think Steve and I are pretty much on the same page. I mean, I could lay out, again, the benefits and the, and the cons both ways. Again, if there are people, elderly people at home that didn't send in their ballots, are we going to force them to expose themselves on May 5th by coming to an election that, that they, feel like they need to vote for because they didn't send the absentee ballots? That's kind of a push to move the election off to June or November. The other thing is November, you get more people, more percentage of the town voting, so you have a bigger voice from the town. On the other hand, May 5th, like you say, that's been the date all along. We've sent out all of the ballots have been out there, absentee ballots. Everybody's kind of set to vote, and a lot of absentee ballots have already been sent in. I think that's a strong push to keep it at May 5th as well. June is a great compromise in between the both. Again, I see it from both ways, and honestly, I think there's an argument to be made both ways. I don't think there's any set, clear, one thing that completely outweighs the other. I'm just being honest. Whichever way we go is fine. I think there's a benefit to any of those dates. That's just my opinion.
Okay. Madhu, I did ask you, right? So I just want to make sure I went around the table. So with this, Martin, too, this is sort of like one of the things where if we made a motion, we would go on the outside of something, and then the next motion would be on the inside. If, in other words, if we...
You would start right with the date that it's filling a blank. So you start with the date you expect to get the fewest votes, and then move chronologically towards the date that you think will get the more votes until you get a majority, and then you stop.
Right. So a form of motion would be to authorize the town manager to write a letter in support of,
November election.
right, of June would be the first one. And then if it didn't pass, then it would go to send a letter in support of keeping our election on May 5th.
Yes, there was some support for November, or at least
Oh, right.
people who were
That's
not
true, too.
opposed to it, so you
Right.
could start with that, because that's probably the least support that I've heard.
Right, you're right. Apologies for that, yeah. So with that, can we maybe we can eliminate this and at least get a direction from the council?
Let me make one last comment.
Sure.
Again, it was brought up a minute ago, is the important, to me, reason why I'm more in support of the 16 June is we do have a lot of elderly folks in the town, and I want to make sure they feel comfortable to come out to vote. That's going to be my vote.
Okay, all right. And with that, someone want to take this with a motion? Or actually, Morgan,
I think what you want to do
yeah.
is just present this to the council as, we're going to write a letter, and the letter is going to be directed to the governor and to our legislators, and it's going to say, we want to see the election for town offices held and blank, and then we're going to fill in the blank with 3 different dates. We'll take a vote, roll call vote for a November date, for the November general election. Then if that fails, then we'll go to the June 16th date that's been proposed by the 3 senators. And then if that fails, we'll go to the May 5th date and see if we can get a majority for that. Does that
Okay.
make sense to everybody?
Yep,
Yes.
absolutely.
Okay.
All right, do you want to put it in form of motion? That way I can get a so moved.
So the form of the motion would be that the council consider sending that letter to the governor and our legislators regarding the date of the election to be set as provided by the council vote with consideration of the November date, the November general election date, the June 16th proposed date, and the May 5th original date to be held by, with the vote to be held by 3 consecutive roll call votes.
Okay,
So moved.
Second.
all right. There's your, we're going to go for, and just for clarification, this will be for the November, to have a letter in support of going from November.
In support of the 11/3 date, roll call vote. Shannon?
No.
Leak?
No.
Morris?
No.
Anthe?
No.
Day?
No.
Edwards?
No.
All right,
In support of the June
16th.
16th date. Shannon?
Yes.
Leak?
No.
Morris?
No.
Anthe?
No.
Day?
Yes.
Edwards?
Yes.
In support of the May?
Well,
Whoop.
there's an interesting
Yeah.
wrinkle here.
Yes, we do have a wrinkle. This qualifies for a tie. And in consideration, I think, as Mr. Shannon said, my vote would be that, yes, we would write a letter for June.
Did
All
you
right.
say 3 consecutive yeses?
No.
Until we get to a majority vote.
Yeah, so we,
Right.
but because of the fact that we had a tie.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So let's go ahead and we'll have I think, Chris, you can draft that letter that we can send out to our representatives there. Okay, moving along. Vice Mayor, we put off our approval of the tax rate because of, to be able to have you participate in that. It was Councilman Leak that asked to put that in an agenda until you were able to join us. So with that, not sure if you had a chance to watch the last meeting as we discussed and deliberated this of having this new tax rate. So there again, we have a draft motion on page 3, and we're in page 3 and 8 of our packet here. And I can open up for discussion or see if we have any other comments that'd like to be made regarding this.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
could the attorney respond to the comment that was made concerning the refund, that it has to come from a surplus, please?
Yes, sir, that is correct. The statute provides that locality may develop a method for returning surplus real property tax revenues.
I'm having a hard time hearing Martin.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. The locality may, by ordinance, develop a method for returning surplus real property tax revenues to taxpayers in any fiscal year in which the locality reports a surplus. That's the language of 15.22511.1.
So I think as some of the listening audience and as we were at our previous meetings in the past handouts that we had, even on a worst case scenario, and they're going to let Roberto, I guess, speak to this or Councilman Leak regarding this, even on a worst case scenario saying that we collected no meals tax I believe it was for March, April, May, June, for the next 4 months, which we know that's not going to happen, but even if that was the case, and we went through the different worst-case scenarios, and the fact that we curved our spending back in March as this happened and did some appropriate changes to make sure that we continued to go into ending this budget in the black, we realized that there was going to be at least a surplus of, and 250 comes to mind, but I'll refer that to Roberto or Councilman Leek that'd like to talk about that.
I'd have to go back and pull up my master document, but it was above 250, but then the only item that we did not have updated was the email that we got that Monday from Rinker on their fee schedule, and after paying the one part of the fee schedule, it brought it down to, I believe it was 230, 233, somewhere in those lines. But yes.
Yep. Roberto, did you have anything to add to that? Mr. Gonzalez? Yeah, he's watching. You're being buffered, so you're just wanted to see if you.
Actually, sorry, I'm actually on a 3-second delay listening to. I can hear clearer through the video. In theory, yes, it looks like we should be able to be in the black, but it's just so many unknowns. We would have to look better in May when we get some more of the revenues coming in. As of right now, in theory, it does seem like it would work, but May we would have a better idea.
Right. Councilman Morris.
So with that answer, my question is, what if at the end of the calendar year our surplus is less than the amounts that are refunded? I mean, legally we wouldn't have any grounds to stand on because we would have given out more than the surplus. So where would we stand as a governing body?
Right. Well, go ahead, Martin. It looks like you were going to.
Yeah, I think the answer to Councilman Morris's question would be that you would authorize the town staff to prepare a method for returning the surplus real property revenues to the taxpayers in an amount not to exceed some figure, and that if closer to the time for actually mailing out the checks, that we determine that the surplus is smaller than that figure, the staff would come back to council and ask you to amend your previous action so that we reduce it. Or you could simply say in the motion that your authorization is to have staff develop a method for returning X number of dollars for, in surplus real estate revenue, not to exceed the actual surplus, and leave it up to staff to determine what the actual surplus is. That way you wouldn't have to come back for further action to amend what you'd previously done.
And I think also it could be a percentage too. So, for example, if we had, where it looks like we're going to project 300,000 in the black for this year, that we could say that we would give it back, say, 50% of the amount. So in other words, it doesn't have to be all of the surplus. I don't think I would feel comfortable giving out everything that was this amount, but if there is a amount that we could agree, at least half of it to be returned to the citizens, would be my thought or suggestion for the council to consider. Thoughts regarding that? But of course, we're dealing with the tax rate, which I realize we're as we discussed this tax rate, I know that you had these questions about the surplus. So,
well, everything is tied together because this tax rate that is being proposed, you know, we have discussed the surplus assisting the residents of the town, but it's tied together. I don't see how we can discuss the tax rate without discussing the surplus.
Why?
Yeah, I'm a little confused too.
So we have two different FY budgets. We're talking about having a surplus this year based off the numbers that we all reviewed and went through at our last meeting to show that, and with addition with the Rinker and having a 50% revenue loss in cigarette tax, 50% loss in meals, 50% loss in sales, taking out all the application, inspection, motor vehicle license, other planning and permit fees, which most are pass-throughs, taking out no more fines and forfeitures coming in, removing citations, accidents reports, and removing the portion that we would be doing on the fund matching, since we're not going to be paying all $500K out this FY year. So we're talking about a total income loss of quote 427, and then you go through all the expenditures and coming expense cuts, which again, the large portion of that was the pedestrian street project, because we already run a lean budget. You come in at 661, so you're talking 233,000 in, hypothetically, but based off all the numbers that we all reviewed together last meeting, we're going to have a surplus of 233. So I think the real estate tax cut is one, or excuse me, the real estate refund is one discussion on if we want to do that. The tax rate for next year and how we're going to build our budget around that is a totally different thing. If we're all on plan with doing the five-year plan to eliminate real estate tax, or at least start getting on a downward trend due to other revenue streams coming in, new restaurants that have come in, and we're having an increase in other revenue areas, I think there's no time that's better than now to go ahead and start going on that downward trend.
I thought that's what we kind of discussed. We were all looking at, we were equalizing it and then doing this tax rate.
For 2019.
No, for our next coming budget. This is the tax rate for next budget.
Okay, so we're not, because the last time we discussed having the tax rate for this past year, this past 10 months.
Doing a
Right,
refund.
that's our incentive.
refund.
Yeah, that's
Correct.
our item number 3. We're on number 2 for setting our tax rate for our budget to then build it off of. And that's where we all agreed that this was the direction that we were all moving forward towards.
My apologies, sir.
No, that's okay.
Now, granted, Chris,
Was this the one I was blackmailed to?
No, this is the one you flipped on. You were against it, then you were in favor of it at the end of the meeting, and that's why we
Yes,
put it.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were
So-
saying, Mr. Connor?
Yeah.
The other idea, because these tax refunds can somewhat be of a logistical nightmare in regards to who lived there when, how much goes to one person, how much goes to the other, distribution, worrying about making sure that we're having a surplus even though we're looking like we are. The other idea is, instead of going to an equalized rate, going to a rate just below an equalized rate. And here's the thought process behind that. Per se, as we were talking about at last meeting, we were talking about cutting by a penny for a refund. That came out to about $35,000 for residents, and then the real estate corporate tax was an additional, I think, $10,000, which we were in the $45K that we were going to end up having to come up with to give back, which would technically be a surplus. If we were to then think with the same process, well, if we're going to have a surplus and build reserves, technically speaking, we can get aggressive on our real estate cut for next year and just, instead of being at a .136, go down to a .130. I mean, I'm not saying to fund it out of reserves, but I'm saying we can build reserves up, so increase our reserves from a 30% up to a 35%, so we have on our restricted side, but at the same time get aggressive on the real estate and note that we can truly live within our means and drive that rate down below an equalized rate.
He's talking surplus.
Yeah.
Were we discussing surplus?
Just wanted to float the idea.
We're talking about a tax rate, adopting a tax rate that'll get us to the next step of our budget.
I would be in favor of that. I like Connor Leake's suggestion. Let's not do a refund. Let's just lower the tax rate for the next the next budget, the real estate tax rate. So I would be in favor of that.
Okay. Vice Mayor, did you have any thoughts? Have you probably? Okay.
Would our surplus, if we lower the tax rate, our surplus will carry us through? I mean, all that'd be carried forward.
Carries over to the next year.
Surplus would go straight into our unrestricted reserves.
Okay.
So into our savings account.
So what are we talking about lowering the tax rate to?
Right now, we have our budget built around our directive to Roberto for the public hearing that's held on May 4th for our annual budget was to build the budget around the equalized rate of a 136. And the additional funds on the expenditure side where we were cutting from was the line item that we created for CIP. Because we weren't pulling everything out of reserves for capital improvements. We were going to use some operationals for capital improvements.
Okay.
And the reduction you're talking about to what now? I know we were at the .136.
Whatever you're comfortable with. I can run a bunch of scenarios and we can walk through what the revenue loss would be. I put together a rough sheet just before this meeting. But it walks you through the 5-year plan that I talked about last year and then I talked about at the last meeting as well. It's built around that equalized rate there, but if you were to drop it 2 pennies down to a 126, you're talking. So remember, the original budget we had was built around the 1.146 per 100 assessed, and that was going to bring us in 417,000. We then said we were going to do it around the equalized rate, which means that we were going to lose revenue of roughly 31,425. So if we were to drop it an additional penny, we would then have a lost revenue of technically 57,137. And now if everyone's still thinking with me here, when we were talking about our draft budget and we were walking through everything, remember we had hard costs, we had our project costs, we had our pass-throughs, and we had what was coming out of reserves. If you recall correctly, out of those reserves, we had roughly, I think it was 488,000. Now 250 of that was the pedestrian street, but we did have a line item in CIP of nearly 80-some thousand. So we can get crafty with it. We can go ahead and reduce it down to by 2 pennies down to a 126 and just build our budget around it. Granted, the one thing that a lot of people will always say is that real estate tax is your only guaranteed income. Meals tax is not guaranteed. We're not guaranteed to have that restaurant stay open. We're not guaranteed for businesses to stay in town and for us to get B-Pol. We're not guaranteed for folks to buy cigarettes and get a cigarette tax. So those taxes are not guarantees. Your only guarantee is a real estate tax. But I think with our trends and where we're looking at, I think an equalized rate is the minimum that we do. And if we want to get below an equalized rate, we can do that as well.
Roberto, anything that you'd like to add to that? Mr. Gonzalez? Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't see you up there, Chris. This looks like the Brady Bunch, by the way, you guys. Go ahead, Chris, then. I'm sorry. Okay. Go ahead, Roberto. Sorry.
So I was listening to Councilman Leak and everyone's concerns. In doing quick math right now, if we actually lowered it from a 0.136 to a 0.130, that means that there's just an additional 17,000 that we would be losing in the revenue side. But like we said, we do have money that we could, as Plan B noted, there's sources in the expenditures that we could reduce as well. The park comes to mind, and also on the CIP. So I would say that it is doable. It's just totally up to council if that's the way they chose to go. As Councilman said, Leak said, there is some logistical things and considerations to do this refund rebate, but if it's a way to help the residents, that is one way to go. And just doing the quick math right now, a 0.130 would work. And I do have, considering the plans that we showed last time, there are areas that we could offset that loss of revenue.
Okay, just one quick question there. I heard something there that piqued my interest. You mentioned something about the park, about reducing their expenditures there?
Yeah, so, yes, sir, Councilman Shannon. Remember, the last meeting, I was tasked, Vice Mayor in the original meeting wanted to have an idea of what this Plan B was. So we went back to the drawing board and just kind of showcase what line items we are ready to and have looked at, that if, the pandemic continued, where we will look at to reduce expenditures to offset the less, the forecasted revenues that may not be here. So with that being said, in the park, there was plans to go forward with the sidewalk and plans like that, but I mean, we still would have enough to maintain the park, to do stuff with the park, but there is money there that we could lessen on the expenditure side to make this reduce revenue on the real estate work.
Okay, last meeting, Connor did yeoman's work as far as I'm concerned. He did a great job showing where we could reduce. Do you recall what the reduction was for the playground? Because I'm not really in favor of reducing any more for the playground, for the park.
I don't think that's a discussion.
So, well, remember, when the Finance Committee presented the budget, we said that you have your hard costs, your pass-through, your reserves, and you have these project costs. The only money that you really can move around is project costs. We did a deep dive into our hard costs, and then we went out and we said, hey, council, if you want to come to us with a line-by-line detail of what you want to reduce on each of our hard cost line items, and let's present that. And we walked through those at the last meeting. From there, you have your project costs. So it's your projects are where you have your I don't want to say discretionary funds, but where you have the money that it's not really allocated anywhere, and you can move that money up, down, left, right. That's why the Finance Committee did not put X amount in one line item of projects versus another one, because we wanted council to look at it and say, where do you want to do with this? Or noting that we could go to an equalized rate and we could reduce some of these quote-unquote project costs and work through there. And so that's to where your projects were, you have your town public works, you had your Haymarket Park, you had the pedestrian street project, which had $250 in it, and then you had CIP funds that we created that line item for additional revenue that was coming in, and we could put it into there and decide where exactly you wanted to put it. So those are your things. I mean, now town public works, that needs money in it to run. Haymarket Park, the only thing that needs to be in there is for duty calls, and outside of that, the additional funds are what do you want to do? If you're wanting to move forward with engineering on that side, but the funds that are in there aren't really going to get you too far on engineering. You're talking 6 figures in engineering. If you're looking at CIP, and we're looking at the CIP that the Planning Commission was reviewing before this pandemic went down, I mean, you have opportunities in there for purchases. It really comes down to what council was wanting to do with those project costs.
Okay.
And that's to where we said we're going to continue to move forward with our draft budget as is, built around an equalized rate. And as we were able to really understand more about what this pandemic is going to be doing here in early June, late June, depending on executive orders and our federal administration, we'll then be able to better determine what this budget needs, if it needs to be decreased, if it doesn't. But at the end of the day, we can set our rates now to be able to do that. I mean, I don't think that we go out and we say, hey, we're gonna set our expenditures X, Y, and Z, and then start raising taxes because we want to do that. We live within our means by setting our rates, knowing what our revenue is going to be, and then going from there. And you'll have some folks say, well, you don't know what's going to happen July 1 with this pandemic. You're correct. We don't know until we get further down the road. But what we do know is just because you allocate money to a line item does not mean that you have to spend that money on that line item. It's
Right.
called smart conservative spending when you have control of this budget, which has been shown through this council. You look at it, and if we're going through August and we're going through September, and whoever's on this council, they're going to be knowing what their revenue streams are coming in, and they're going to be knowing if they can really touch these project costs or not. But we've been smart. We have money in our unrestricted and our restricted reserves. We have money to be able to fund our salaries of our staff to be able to get through on day-to-day operations. We have the cash flow in there. There's no issues on those sides. So it's coming down to what do you want your tax rate to be, and then we live within our means from that tax rate.
Okay, thank you.
Just looking from our Zoom people, if there's anybody else that wanted to speak on that.
I just want to say that I'm in favor of equalizing the rate. I think that's the best thing to do right now. Let's just equalize the rate, take it to the 136, if I remember right, and I believe that's the best thing to do right now.
Yeah, and as you saw, if it did a 130, you're really only talking about an additional $17,000 if we did the 130. So we could make a little chip at it and still be very, I think, very conservative over our overall numbers, if that's a consensus. Vice Mayor, did you?
No, I'm just listening to everybody.
Okay, all right.
I'm in support of the 136 and not going for below that, especially at a time when a new council may be voted in. For them, if they're voted in, then that's on them in looking at this and said, okay, we don't want we support going for the 0 in 4 or 5 years, or we don't want to go to 0. But I just think at this time it's a good gesture. It's fair to the residents and the businesses to hold it at 136.
Okay, and so anybody else like to speak on that? If not, we can entertain a motion.
Instead of refunding the check, we can go down. Refunding the check I think it's a nightmare. Like, let's say, for example, a person sold the house.
Yes.
Then they move away, or you refund the money.
Yep, we did have that, was a big concern when we did that. And people cashing the checks as well. We had one, so. Yep. All right. So with that, anybody want to step out here and, okay.
I move to approve resolution number 2020-009, adopting the fiscal year 2020-2021 tax rates and fee schedule.
Motion's been second. Discussion on the motion. Clarification, do we need any clarification on this, Martin, as we look at the, we do have it as .136 as on page number 5, just to make sure everybody realizes what we're voting on and with the fee schedule. So
That's correct.
So with that, any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll go with a roll call vote, please.
Shannon?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Day?
Yes.
Edwards?
Yes.
All right, wonderful. We can move forward. As we've been kind of doing our discussion on this refund, we're on page 10 of our discussion. I think, Roberto, I can't remember if you did bring any kind of discussion regarding that as you reached out, as we've kind of already, I think, spoke about the concerns about doing this type of refund by the previous residents that might have owned the home, the fact that some people don't cash the checks, the logistics. I'm not sure, do we even have enough consensus to move on with this? I
think we continue to move on and look at it. I think we asked Roberto, I think, how his call went and continue to have this on the May agenda as previously discussed.
Okay.
I agree with Connor.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. We'll continue to put it on the agenda and to look at the options and see what we can do.
Just any update, Roberta, was there any update from your conference call with our auditor and our accountant?
So it is our accountant. Basically, Mary had stated that it is possible. There's just some logistical considerations. So I was going to ask council if it was okay with y'all that I'd like to come back with May 4th with a little bit more information, because there's some information and more emails, discussions I want to have with her concerning it. So I would be better suited to answer and give you a full report come May.
Is there anything that they need from us that we need to provide for them in regards to showing that we may have a surplus? Or?
Yeah, they kind of want to see what we're at revenue-wise, as we get closer to May. And so I do have some sources that are delayed on revenue, so I kind of want to collect that information so they can have a better grasp on how we would get affected or have a better idea. And there's some information too. I just want to go back and forth scenarios with them as to how it would work.
Beautiful.
Okay.
For clarification, sir.
Go ahead. No, I was going to clarify something, but hopefully you're not clarifying what I'm clarifying.
I'll clarify what you wanted to be clarified.
Yeah, there you go.
Mr. Attorney, the surplus that is mentioned, that is concerning our net surplus, or is it regarding real estate surplus?
It says surplus real property tax revenues, so the surplus is not further defined in terms of X minus Y. What figure are you subtracting from what other figure? So you're left to interpret that.
Correct. And our town code, though, does not state where our real estate tax is supposed to be allocated towards. So you could say that you have a surplus in real estate tax because you didn't spend the 200 and X amount, or, I mean, what are we bringing in this year? Actuals 275, or excuse me, 375 in real estate tax. So if we're saying we're bringing in 375 and we have a surplus of 233, you can state that your real estate tax was your surplus of 233.
So as a council, are we assuming that we're discussing surplus later agenda and even tonight, that it's a surplus of the entire budget?
You could look at it that way, I guess, but if you're giving it back as a refund, you need to be looking at it as it's from the real estate.
I need you to think outside the box with me.
Yeah, it's we get all these different revenues. It's all in one pot. We don't
The only tax revenue that we bring in that states it has to be allocated towards X, Y, and Z is our TOT tax, from my knowledge. And I would have to go back to review the code to determine, to double check that. But from my review, the only thing states is our TOT tax, which states, well, we just changed, but 4% goes into the general, and then 3% must be spent on promoting tourism within the town. And that's the only thing that states where money needs to go. Outside of that, and I'll double check Muni code, but everything, any other tax simply states that it goes into our general fund.
And I see Martin shaking his head yes, so I assume that you're agreeing to what Councilman Leake said.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, right. And that wasn't what I was going to talk about. So,
No, I'm just concerned that, that whatever we're doing it right, because the terminology, as the attorney said, it's vague. So
it's ending the year in black, and what do we do with that? Do we carry it over into our next year's budget? Do we consider it that, hey, maybe we, quote, overcharged our residents and we refund this as the way that we've done?
We will know the black portion of surplus for real estate within another month. True?
Not real estate. I think the overall surplus.
Not overall.
So from the motion that was made at the last month's meeting to push B-poll back 30 days to May 30th, if everyone takes advantage of that, we won't know if we have that deficit of 100K there until all those B-poll payments come in. We're trending on B-poll to be good. Excuse me, from the businesses that remitted last year to the businesses that remitted this year, their trends are up. In regards to meals tax, I spoke with Roberto today. We expected to only bring in 30,000 for March, and we're currently at 43,000, and we're still missing 7. So we expect to be up there. Now, granted, March was only 2 months worth, or two weeks worth of the executive orders being out. So I think we'll have a better understanding on BPOL in June. We'll have a better understanding of meals tax, at least in May, by May 20th, knowing what a full month of April looks like in regards to being down in sales. And then from there, as Roberto stated earlier, he's working with, for the sales tax. We haven't received a payment since January, February, somewhere like that. And so he's tracking down. Now, granted that it's always been delayed. We've always been a couple months behind, so it's nothing out of the norm, but we're a little further than what's normal by a couple weeks. So he's tracking down to see where that check is coming in from in regards to the sales tax. So outside of those things, I mean, fines and forfeitures, we had an additional check that came in. Now you have the courts that are closed and not taking cases, I believe, until June. And so with that being said, the only payments that we'll be receiving is anyone who's on a payment plan. So, but at the same time, we've calculated those within our last month's meeting and walked through these intended losses. But right now, I mean, we're on track to be up over what we said with a 50% loss on meals tax. But long story short, BPOL, June, meals tax, you'll have at least 1 month to play off of in May.
And I think there was a point, too, that you wanted to mention as you walked around to the restaurants, too.
Yeah, on Wednesday, Mr. Leek and I, we went around to deliver the signs, and we got all positive responses. There were 2 businesses that basically told us they don't need the sign because they're doing way better than before the virus hit. What was that, edible place? One place was not open, but we hit everything else. But we got very good comments back from the business managers and owners. So, that goes, for me, it was good relief for me because I voted against the, giving back to the, from the meals tax. So that was, for us, it was a good exercise to go out and see these businesses face to face and ask them, how they were doing and just to get good responses. So I know it's really early in the lockdown phase of the epidemic, but it was good signs on Wednesday what we saw.
Okay.
But I'm just wondering, just going back to the surplus that we were talking about, if we could see what it would look like if we were to give back a surplus, give back a refund just on the surplus for real estate, for business, for the real estate, instead of incorporating everything. And I understand the concept of, well, it's not designated anywhere, so it's hard to calculate it.
Right.
But what if we don't even include the meals tax in it, or cigarette tax, and just look at just the surplus just from the real estate, and from that we look at giving the refund from that.
So statistically or mathematically, you could probably put a percentage and a formula to that the real estate equals X amount of percentage of our overall budget, the amount that we have as extra in this overall budget, and put that percentage to a formula that you could actually probably come up with that real number.
I think it would be good at the next council meeting, whenever we discuss it, just to have that as an option, that council members can look at it and say, hey, let's just don't touch meals tax, let's not touch cigarette tax. And it's easy to punch the numbers in and see, just give us an option, just to see we can just use that portion alone as a surplus. Because I understand it's vague, talking about the surplus, and we interpret it as, oh, it's surplus on the net, and then we're doing it incorrectly, or it doesn't seem, it looks shady, like because we're doing it on the whole. I've got a lot of municipalities do it. But I just wanted to protect ourselves by not taking it from the net, but just take it from the real estate and see what it looks like.
And I think you could probably get a formula to make that actually work. Yeah. Other discussion? Otherwise, I think the directive is to go ahead and put this on our May agenda as we continue to work forward there. I think that's it for me as far as our agenda items, that we've covered everything.
I only have one question. Just want to make sure that the public hearing notice went out for our annual budget for our May 4th.
I believe so. I've got the,
Perfect.
okay. All right, if there's no further business, I'll entertain that motion.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
The motion's been second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you all very much. Appreciate you joining.
Oh, happy